So everybody asked, how did this AgileCamp get started? And it was a bunch of folks actually out of Silicon Valley, and we were a little frustrated. We just said, you know, here we are in the middle of Silicon Valley, and we don't have anything Agile coming out our way. So in our little group, we decided, yeah, we should do something different. We should try putting on our own conference. And so we gathered our ideas and our resources. We talked to a lot of people, and this is when I was doing coaching at PayPal. So we were well under. The transformation itself was a four-year project, and we were halfway through it. And one of the coaches I was working with, her name is Mita Vyas, and Mita said, I know this guy, and he's really smart, really talks about some great innovative things, and his name's Rich Sheridan. And he's out of Michigan, not so sure if he'll come out, but it would be interesting to bring him in. And so we reached out to Rich, and we heard Rich was writing a book called Joy. And the more we got into this, the more we started thinking, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what we've all been waiting for. We've been waiting to hear about this joy and how to make a workplace that people love, because that's exactly what PayPal was trying to do. In fact, we shared the story with the CTO of PayPal, James Barresi. And James was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what we're trying to do here at PayPal. That is, do everything from take this company that was all structure, tear down the walls, and create something new, something fresh. So the timing worked out really well that we were able to bring in Rich to start off our first AgileCamp. So for our 7th AgileCamp, we were delighted to have him return and come back and share some of his learnings over the past several years. But I have to share with you, Rich is one of those leaders that you just have to pause and really take note of what he's saying, because if it's changed the hearts and the minds of people over at PayPal and people literally all over the world, I hope that it'll change your heart too. So with that, Rich Sheridan.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be back to AgileCamp. Thanks, Stacy, for inviting me back onto your stage. I really appreciate being here. It's a friendly place, Texas. I was parking my car out in the parking lot, and I mentioned to the guy who was helping guide me into my parking place, I said, you know, I'm from Detroit, and I was hoping for more than a 16-degree temperature differential from where I came from coming here. And he laughed. He says, well, just wait a day and things will change. Apparently that's the way it works down here. But as I'm walking away, he literally chased me down and he says, Sir, I just got to tell you, you know, your guy, your quarterback for the Detroit Lions, he's from here. So Matt Stafford apparently was the star quarterback at University Park, Texas High School and set all kinds of records in the state of Texas. And I can tell you, Matt Stafford is joy for Detroit Lions fans. So, so I feel a strong kindred connection between this area and Detroit. So thanks for Matt Stafford. Let me tell you, when you release a business book to the world, and it has the words joy and love on the cover, you're not sure you're going to be taken seriously. I was talking with Dayton. Where's Dayton at? There he is. He's like, does this work with the CIOs? I mean, seriously? Do you not get thrown out? And I wasn't sure. You know, it was a vulnerable moment releasing this book to the world. But clearly it touched hearts. And now my life is airplanes and speaking and signing books and talking about joy in the workplace. And I'm going to just give you a little peek into the company. The video I'm going to show you is about a 90-second video. It is a book trailer. So yes, please go out and buy a book, but that's not the reason I want to show you. I just think the video in 90 seconds captures the essence of what I'm going to talk with you about today. Most organizations don't really spend much time thinking about their culture. Most organizations operate in chaos. Everyone wants to work on something that's bigger than themselves. I did. I started out in an industry that I was very excited about. Very quickly, I hit a trough of disillusionment, And by 1997, when I was promoted to vice president of product development, I wanted out. I wanted to get as far away from this industry as I could. And then in that moment, I decided to change the industry. And that's the story that I've captured in this book. People are coming from all over the planet to come visit this space that's in the basement of a parking structure in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan. And they're coming for a reason. They're coming to see something. What most people are looking for is some lessons around what it takes to build an intentionally joyful culture. Imagine half of my team had joy and the other half didn't. Which half would you want working on your project? We had so many requests for these tours, we realized it was time to share this story with the world in a different way. And that's how the book came to be. The space is flexible. We work 2 to a computer. We assign these pairs. We switch them every 5 working days. The human energy that results from this kind of organization, you can actually feel the joy when you're in the room. My name is Richard Sheridan, and I'm the author of Joy, Inc. Available wherever books are sold. I made the mistake one time of presenting this same talk at Walmart Corporation down in Bentonville, Arkansas, and on the bumper slide at the end, I did not list Walmart.com as one of the places you could buy the book, and CIO in the room pointed that out to me during my talk. Never made that mistake again. Jeff Bezos has not invited me into Amazon yet. So I'm going to tell a very personal story here, and I find that this story is relatable to many who hear me speak. So I'm going to tell my journey. So I started out in this industry when I was just a little kid. Don't worry, this won't be that long. But in 1971, I wrote a 2-line program, typed it into a computer. Believe me, there were computers back in 1971. They work a little different than they do today. And the computer came back and clacked out on a roll of paper, because that's the way they used to work. Hi, Rich, because that's what I told it to do. And I was hooked. I knew what I was going to do the rest of my days. My kids, who are older now, are still astounded by the fact that I had chosen my profession by the time I was 13 years old. By 1973, I had won an international programming contest by typing in the entire baseball register into the computer so my friends and I could play baseball against one another in the winter months. And of course, I should have stuck with that, because now it's fantasy baseball, but I just wanted to play baseball on the computer. That contest win got me my first job as a programmer before I could drive, and I couldn't believe people would pay me to do this thing I simply loved to do as a hobby. From that point forward, between 1973 and 1982, I kept working. I worked through high school graduation, eventually went up to the University of Michigan, got a couple of degrees in computer science and computer engineering, and quite frankly, I thought I had the world by the tail, because in 1982, this was a very heady time in our industry. PC had just been released, the Macintosh is out a couple of years later. You could go anywhere. And the career that followed for me was, quite frankly, beautiful. It was raises and stock options and promotions and greater authority and greater responsibility and bigger teams and all this sort of thing. The way the world measures success, I had it. There was only one significant problem. There was a different line going on in my life. I was falling out of love with what I did as a profession. By my mid-30s, I had already begun to start taking the longest possible drives to work. I didn't want to be there anymore. So what was going on? How was I falling so quickly out of love when the world says I was successful, I was good, I was doing well, and yet in here, I didn't feel that way. So what the world saw was different than what I was seeing. What I was seeing was chaos. I would come home after long nights, time away from family. My wife would have the microwave or the dinner in the microwave cold, and I would be late again, and I'd be tired, and she'd look and say, "Oh, honey, did you get a lot done today?" In my chaotic world, the realization was, no, I got nothing done today. All right, I spent a lot of time in meetings, phones were ringing off the hook. It was firefighting every single minute of every single day. But I'd come home after the end of these long days, sometimes all-nighters, sometimes weekends away from family, and I got nothing done. And you probably know that in our industry, if you operate in chaos for too long, you suffer events, negative events. Our industry is rife with them. We barely can open up a copy of the Wall Street Journal. Even the Wall Street Journal was hit by such an event. And you find out about problems in our industry. The one I write about in the book is not one of my stories, but one that's famous in our industry. A tired programmer at Knight Capital Group made a simple updating mistake of server software, and in the next 45 minutes, traded $7 billion worth of securities their New York Stock Exchange trading platform wasn't supposed to, costing Knight Capital Group $400 million in 45 minutes. Are you with me? Would that be considered a negative event here at Capital One? Okay. Or USAA or any of the other companies that are here. So when there's a negative event, there is usually an organizational response, isn't there? And in our industry, it often looks like a big 3-ring binder, software development lifecycle, templated document full of stage gates and committees and preloaded forms and sign-offs and approval processes and stage gates. In fact, it gets so complicated, we have to put a police force in charge of this, a project management office, just to make sure all the forms are signed, right? And you go from chaos to full-blown bureaucracy. You go from the land of never getting anything done to the land of never getting anything started. Because you're waiting, right? You're waiting for a form to complete, a meeting to be had, a sign-off, an approval, something like that. And so here we are. This was my life. And of course, things still need to happen. So shadow IT groups form. You start to placate the bureaucracy, and you work through the system through hallway project management. You're pulling people aside. Now you're operating in the worst version of our industry. You're operating simultaneously in chaos and bureaucracy. This is my life. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth it went. Now, eventually somebody woke up and said, hey, whoa, wait a minute. We went a little too far with this bureaucratic stuff. Let's back it off a little bit. Let's pull the bureaucratic level back just a bit. Let's lighten up our processes. For small projects, let's just have a little stapled together document, a few committees, a few sign-offs, a few forms. But even that doesn't work. Those meetings get canceled. We cancel the SDLC process altogether. We fire the PMO. We declare we're agile now. And usually all that means is we've chosen chaos again, right? Well, this was my life. This was what was going on here. And I didn't want any part of it. My escape route was planned. It was fairly well conceived, not necessarily supported by my wife and 3 daughters. I was going to start a canoe camp in the boundary waters of Minnesota. Funny how the women laugh at me when I say that, just the same way my wife does. She's like, really, Rich? Did you think the girls and I would follow you? I will assure you there is at least one guy in this audience who will pull me aside afterwards and say, hey, Rich, tell me about the canoe camp idea. How far along did you get with that? But in this trough of disillusionment that I described, I am an eternal optimist. I was going to keep digging in this room full of manure until I found the pony. And my journey out led me to authors and books. But not books on technology. Books on teamwork, on learning organizations like Peter Senge's The Fifth Discipline. Books like Tom Peters' book In Search of Excellence. Books by Peter Drucker on management. All of these books were pointing, for me, to a shining city on the hill. They just didn't tell me how to get there. But what I realized is the challenges I faced were not technological challenges, but challenges of human organization, of organizational design. And so my journey out led me to one significant, what I call a click moment. In 1999, I read a book by a guy named Kent Beck on something called extreme programming. And I saw a video on an industrial design firm in California called IDEO. And in that moment, everything, all my preparation coalesced, and I knew where I was going. And over the next 2 years, I transformed a very tired old public company to something that looks just like what you saw in the video. So yes, I've started a company with these principles in place, Menlo Innovations, we started in 2001. but I don't want to let you off the hook because you work for a large, maybe bureaucratic organization where you are, because I did this first inside of a 30-year-old tired public company. And I might still be there to this day doing what I was doing there if the internet bubble hadn't burst. And in 2001, boom, the California parent that had bought my company shuttered every remote office they had and sent me packing. I went home, I told my wife I'd lost my job with tears in her eyes. She asked me, she says, "You're unemployed?" And I said, "No, honey, I'm an entrepreneur now." Remember, eternal optimist. It took her 6 months to figure out that entrepreneurship actually pays less than unemployment. But by then we were profitable, and 10 years later she said I was a genius. So don't forget the 10-year part. So what had happened in 2001, they could take everything away from me save one thing. They took my job, my title, my office, my team, stock options, paycheck, all that kind of stuff. They just couldn't take away what I had learned in those 2 years. And so that's what I want to explore with you today, is what's the antidote to this picture? Because it isn't about finding the perfect tuning point for this. It's not about finding the perfect leverage point or just little enough bureaucracy and just enough chaos. It's actually choosing to pursue something completely different. The word I give it is structure. Simple, repeatable, measurable, visible structure based on human relationships that feed human energy. This is what we are seeking in our teams. There's no question about this. If you think about the statistics that are driving our industries, all industries crazy, it's the statistic that says 60 to 70 to 80% of our teams are disengaged at work. I can tell you my long drives to work, my showing up as late as possible, leaving as early as possible, and I was one of the leaders. I was one of those disengaged people. I know exactly what that feels like. But if we can reach into that 60 to 70, 80% in the teams we've already hired who already come to work every day, we can achieve heights and distances that were previously unimaginable. The way I describe this now is in the context of joy, which is a weird word for business. I get it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel like the stuff they teach in business schools. And people ask me, "Rich, why did you pick joy?" And quite frankly, the first time I thought about it, I hadn't thought about it too deeply, I guess. I thought about that 13-year-old kid who typed the 2-line program into the computer and for some reason could see the future and said, "I want to be part of it." But I realized the joy for me actually came from a much deeper place. I actually had to roll the clock back just a few more years. I went back to a 10-year-old version of me when my mom and dad had bought a new shelving unit for the living room, and in 1967, buying a big piece of furniture, this thing was 8 feet wide and 6 feet tall, was kind of a big deal for them. It was out in the garage in a cardboard box, much like what you'd get up from IKEA today, and they went out to dinner and a movie one night, and I was left on my own. And my inner engineer kicked in. And I went out into the garage, and over the next 2 hours, I pulled out those 50 pieces of wood and those 200 little nuts, bolts, and screws. I worked my way through 38 pages of, user manuals, because this was not IKEA, believe me. And I put together that shelving unit, and I was so proud of myself. And then I realized, dang, I built it in the garage, and Mom wants it in the living room, right? So for the next hour, my 10-year-old self inched that thing out the front of the garage. Remember, this thing's 8 feet long and 6 feet tall. I'm probably about 5 feet at this point. And I'm just inching it down the sidewalk and into the utility room and through the kitchen. I pushed it right where she wanted it in the living room. Now, my 10-year-old memory says I didn't hurt it a bit in that journey, okay? But I set up Dad's books, Mom's knickknacks. I wired the stereo all up, and when Mom and Dad walked in the door that night, I had Mom's favorite album playing, and she cried. Joy. I want to tap into something inside of you. The reason we got into this industry is to delight others. That the work of our hearts, our hands, and our minds would be delivered to the world, get out into the world, and one day delight the people we intend to serve. So the first takeaway I want to give you from my talk is this. If you're looking at a cultural transformation, if you're working on an agile journey, if you're trying to change the way you do things, the first thing I want you to think about is, who do we serve and what delight do we want to create for them? It's amazing how much other stuff can fall off the table if you focus on that. And I will tell you that I was being denied that joy for most of my early career. I was being managed with fear. I was spending lots of time away from family, missing important celebrations, sometimes my own birthdays. I was living in this chaotic world where our processes felt the equivalent of flicking lit cigarette butts everywhere while carrying sloshing gas cans, and we wondered why we had to come to work in firefighting costumes every single day. Most of the fires that were going on were fires that my team's own bureaucratic processes had set. And quite frankly, the saddest story of all in our industry is one where one day the boss comes in, sometimes after years of effort, and says, oh, by the way, the project you've been working on the last several years canceled. But don't worry, we have other projects lined up for you. You're okay, right? Like, no, I'm not okay, right? The largest, I believe, I don't know, I have, strong statistics on this, but I have trouble imagining there's a bigger one. Likely the largest business project failure in the history of mankind occurred in our industry. 10,000 people assembled for 5 years to create Windows Vista. Now think about it, as soon as Vista was done and was ready to ship, the marketing team at Microsoft sent out, and all the new computers were getting coupons that said, oh, by the way, you can downgrade XP. We were only kidding about Vista. Wait for Windows 7 to come along. Well, I think about the poor people at Microsoft that slaved away under Microsoft Death March-like culture for 5 years, only to have the marketing team tell them the product wasn't really going to ship. That is disillusionment in our industry. That is the anti-joy of our industry, and I didn't want that anymore. So I searched and I searched and I searched, and when this book and that video happened, I had that click moment. And what I want to explore with you for the rest of my talk is, does joy matter? Can I answer Dayton's question of, how do you justify this to the CIOs of companies? Now, delightfully, for those of you here from Capital One, Rob Alexander has been to Menlo. He spent an entire day with us, your CIO. And so you can call him up and see what he thinks. And I will tell you, people come from all over the world every year. This is our tour count at the end of last year, a year ago now. Almost 4,000 people came from all over planet Earth to spend anywhere from 2 hours to 5 days in the basement of a parking structure in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan, okay? This is not some exotic location, but they're coming to see something, and when they walk in the door, the first thing they are confronted with is one of those vilified open office environments you hear about, right? Fast Company magazine says this is an idea born in the mind of Satan in the deepest caverns of hell, right? They have psychologists with data that proves these environments don't work, especially for introverted engineers, right? There are books being written, there are articles coming out every week telling us this doesn't work. How do I know? Because everybody in the world, when those articles comes out, sends them to me. You're like, oh, look, Rich, it doesn't work. Here's another article proving it doesn't work. Look, if you want data that proves this doesn't work, just write me. I will be able to arm you with article after article after article. But don't come visit Menlo and don't read my book. Stop right there, because I can tell you that it does work with one simple twist of language. We didn't build an open and collaborative office. We didn't build an open and collaborative workspace. What we built was an open and collaborative culture. Our office is a reflection of our cultural values. It is a noisy environment. Interestingly, we have very few rules at Menlo, but one of the strongest is you cannot wear earbuds while you're working. We want people to overhear each other. And as you saw in the video, we work in pairs, so it's a noisy environment, but it is the noise of work. And in that noise of work, when you overhear others, you have a chance for the serendipity engine that humans are just famous for to kick in. The team likes to work shoulder to shoulder. We don't have a hierarchy at Menlo. We have no reporting relationships. It's weird, I know. There are no bosses at Menlo. You can ask me about that in the Q&A. But the team prefers to sit shoulder to shoulder. The space itself is flexible and visual. The team is in charge of the space. The lightweight aluminum tables, the pull-downs from the ceiling, The team changes the space every single day in small ways. And I sit out in space with everybody else. Everybody wants, well, where does the CEO sit? No gifted C-suite for this guy. I'm out in the middle of the room. I have the same 5-foot table as everybody else, and quite frankly, I sit where the team puts me. I don't choose where I sit. The last time they moved me 35 feet closer to the front door. Why does everybody get that when I tell that joke? Yeah, I'm worried. One of these times I'm going to come back from one of these talks and I'm going to be on the other side of the glass. The space is also very visual. I can tell you in the first job I ever had out of school, Carol Gutman was in charge. She was the building czar. And boy, if you put one piece of paper on the wall, man, the police were coming down to nail you for that. One scratch and Jim was there with a paintbrush, fixing it on the walls. Well, we made the walls all of this push-pinnable material so we can put all of our visual artifacts wherever we happen to be. And we built that learning organization that Peter Senge talks about in the 5th discipline. Yes, there are books everywhere at Menlo. They're just where we consume books like potato chips, but that isn't the essential ingredient of our learning organization. It is the way our team operates. You see, we connected our team intellectually. We connected them emotionally. We connected them physically. 2 people work at one computer all day long on the same task at the same time. This isn't here, come and help me with my work. It is our work together. This paradigm of Menlo's, of pairing people, and I don't mean just our programmers. We pair our QA people, we pair our project managers, we pair our high-tech anthropologists. And somebody challenged me in my executive session today, what about you, Rich? When do you pair? And I appreciate those kind of questions because, quite frankly, what I found in our company's history is every role we don't pair is a place I find a weakness in our ability to grow as an organization. And I can be that weakness for our team. The other thing we realized is there's got to be a different way we communicate in our profession. You see, our profession speaks a particular language, don't we? We call it dolphin speak at Menlo. You ever hear dolphins talking to one another? Right? It sounds very intelligent. The other dolphins seem to understand it perfectly, but we think there's a language in there somewhere. We have to change the conversation with our stakeholders. In fact, we see 3 different conversations that fundamentally need to change inside of our industry. One is the conversation we have with customers, the people who, in our case, who pay us to do our work, or perhaps in organizations like yours, the business sponsors of projects within your organization. That has to change. We have to change how we communicate with each other, and we have to communicate differently with the people we serve. Now, I call the people we serve in our industry the lost tribe of technology. You know what lost tribes are like, right? The anthropologists are hacking their way through the jungle trying to, locate something deep in the Amazon forest, and all of a sudden they come across this indigenous people that no one has ever seen before. In our industry, we call them users. Actually, we call them stupid users. And then we write dummies books for those poor people. Think about it. We have an industry that for our entire history has called the people we serve stupid users. It's ridiculous, don't you think? Right? And then we write dummies books just to remind you. And then the best part is we get them to self-deprecate. Oh, you know me, I'm just a stupid user. Awesome, we have you right where we want you. No. It's a fundamental error in design. If users are struggling with what we've created, it's not because they're stupid, it's because our designs need improvement. So this is a fundamentally important point. Now, I love this quote by John Naisbitt. What's fascinating to me is he wrote this in the early 80s. Look at what he says, that the most exciting breakthrough of the century we're in now is not going to occur because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human. I believe this is exactly why the Agile movement exists. Because the humanity of our industry is disturbed. We want to get to that kind of joy in the world. Now, when we communicate internally, the internal communication inside our team, Interestingly enough, at Menlo, because we're all in a room together, we're probably about 3 or 4 times the size of this particular room right here. Interestingly, we don't use electronics when we communicate. We use what we like to call high-speed voice technology. Interestingly enough, the hardware was pre-installed at birth. Vocal cords, tympanic membranes, auditory nerve stimulation of the brain, supplemented by eyebrows and body language and tonal inflection. Right? In fact, if we want to call an all-company meeting at Menlo, because we're all in the room together, because we don't work weird hours and we're present with one another, this is the way it works. If I want to call an all-company meeting, I say, hey, Menlo. You say, hey, Rich. Let's practice it. Hey, Menlo. Hey, Rich. And the whole place goes quiet. And we are now in an all-company meeting. Nobody moved. No CC all emails, no book the conference rooms, no checking of calendars of serious executives, anything like that. Hey, Menlo, hey, you can do this. If you come and visit, some of you in the room have been to Menlo, they've come to see it. You can just walk in the front door and just storm in and say, hey, Menlo, and they'll all stop and go, hey, you. And then they'll all be quiet. So you should have something to say at that point, okay? Or it'll get uncomfortable pretty quickly. But this is an important part of keeping things going. You see, we hate meetings. We think they're mind-numbing, spirit-sucking, energy-draining devices of management. You can ask me in the Q&A section what I really think about meetings. So we avoid having them as much as possible. Now, we do have a daily stand-up meeting. It's called by a dartboard on the wall. The dartboard has an alarm clock. Why a dartboard needs an alarm clock? No idea, but it was programmable. We're programmers, so we programmed it. And at 10 o'clock every morning, bong, 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 this alarm goes off, and everybody gathers in a circle. 60, 70 people come to our stand-ups. We've had people in the Agile community, you can't do a stand-up with more than 12 people. And we're like, we don't know that. We're going to keep doing it till it breaks. So our stand-up is formed. Everybody comes, even Fern the dog. And it is controlled by the now iconic symbol of Menlo, the 2-horned plastic Viking helmet. So you can explain later why there's a plastic Viking helmet on the cover of the book, given I'm a Lions fan. Why do we like the Viking helmet? Well, we work in pairs, so we report out in pairs. And the token moves around the room. Everybody reports out in their pairs, what they're working on, where they need help, any general announcements. The token goes around the 60 to 70 people. And when you're done, you just set it on the table, and if any of you remember the old Hill Street Blues show, we say, let's be careful out there, and then we go back to work. And generally speaking, when we look at the dartboard, it says 10:13. 70-person stand-up, everybody speaks, everybody reports out, and the meeting concludes in 13 minutes. I defy most organizations to begin a meeting of 70 people in 13 minutes, let alone call it, assemble it, start it, hold it, give everybody a chance to report out, complete it, get back to work. There's a bunch of reasons this goes fast. I'm happy to discuss those later. The other conversation we needed to change was with our customers. How do we bring our customers up to date on what we're working on? Well, we do it in what we call a show and tell, but interestingly, in our show and tells, we reverse the roles. We're building software on behalf of our customers. That's what we do for a living. We're a design and development firm that does contract work on behalf of our customers. But when our customers visit with us, if they're local, they come to Menlo. If they're far away, we do this electronically. And we do both. When the customer interacts with us during show and tell to see the update on the work we had done just the previous 5 days, they show it to us, we don't show it to them. We put them at the keyboard and mouse and have them show us the work we did the previous 5 days. This changes the equation of this particular meeting. Now, another takeaway for you. How many of you have meetings where you work? Anybody meetings? Anybody? No? Okay, a few of you have meetings. Okay. I want you to note in the next meeting you have in your organization the moment of disengagement in the meeting. Okay, and it's easy to measure. You'll just need a stopwatch. You won't need more than 60 seconds, I can almost guarantee you. This is what it looks like. Meeting begins, somebody starts talking, talking head up at the front, and then somebody in the meeting that is the moment of disengagement. Now, you know what happens at that point. Hey, Rich, I think you had something to contribute to this point, didn't you? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you talking to me? Where were we? What were we talking about? I was getting ready for my next meeting. What were we talking about? Right? Anybody ever see that behavior in a meeting? Kill those meetings. I guarantee you that moment of disengagement occurs in less than 60 seconds in the standard corporate meeting. Now, we want to change the equation. We want to do things that specifically keep people engaged. Now, one of the other things we do is we go into planning. We plan with paper. This is weird, right? All work at Menlo is first described on a little 5.5 inch by 8.5 inch handwritten index card, estimated in hours. This would be a 16-hour card, and this would be an 8-hour card. We fold the card to the size of the estimate. And then our customer goes through and starts picking up these little tokens and laying them down on planning sheets that represent the capacity of the team, the budget for the project, and the time frame we're trying to get done with it. Now, I will tell you, people look at us and they're like, my God, you're like the Amish of software development, you know? Why do you use paper? Why don't you use and pick your favorite project management tool? We used paper because we believe it works better for humans. See, humans are visual, tactile creatures. Just by me rubbing my thumbs over this piece of paper, I'm lighting up so many neurons in your brain right now, right? It's amazing. You can actually feel the size of the task based on the folding. And so the customer picks up these little folded pieces of paper, starts laying them down on the planning sheets. It's a collaborative exercise. It's very easy and scalable, and it's multi-user. And what's beautiful about the system is, well, okay, those of you who have meetings, again, raise your hands, people who have meetings, and okay, a few more of you this time. So have you ever had at the end of one of your meetings where somebody says, so we're all on the same page, right? Are we all on the same page? Are you with me? We're all on the same page? Okay. Ask an annoying question the next time you hear that. Just raise your hand. This might get you fired, so it may be the last question you ask, but that's okay. Say, hey boss, I'm okay being on the same page. Which page are we talking about? The flip chart, the whiteboard, the yellow pad, the notebook, the laptop, the email comes out after the meeting. I'm okay being on the same page. Please tell me which page we're talking about, right? At Menlo, when we say we're all on the same page, we are literally all on the same page, right? And then you want to ask one more annoying question in that same meeting, just raise your hand and say, hey, what did we decide not to do? You'll get this blank stare. Well, we decided not to do everything we didn't decide to do. Oh, that's clear. In our system, you can actually see. I think you can already predict. Can you see the things that we've decided not to do on the screen here? Yeah, what are you pointing at? They're still on the table. Yeah, look at that. I didn't have to teach you that part of it. Now, I'm going to teach you our project management system, okay? This is the add function. This is the delete function. You've now learned our project management system. All right? All right. And it's collaborative. Our customers get invested in this. They work side by side, all supported by simple handwritten artifacts. And when we get done with planning, we put the pieces of paper up on the wall for all to see in swim lanes under people's names so they specifically know not only what they're working on, but what order they're expected to work on them, because they'll be prioritized at that point. And they're arranged by day based on the estimates that came from the people who do the work, so that Wednesday's work is next to Wednesday and Thursday's work is next to Thursday, and the yarn moves down the string and the color-coded sticky dots tell the story. Yellow says that's what we're working on now. Orange says we think we're done. Because I remember programmer land. I was a programmer for the first 20 years of my life. I can tell you programmers have as many different definitions for done as Eskimos have words for snow. You've probably heard many of them. I used many of them. Well, it's done, but it's not done. Well, it's finished, but it's not ready. Well, it's ready, but it's not complete. Are there any QA people in the room, either former, current, or lead QA teams? Okay, awesome. Imagine you're doing QA and something breaks, you find a problem, and you go back to the programmers and you're like, hey guys, I was testing the software you just released and I found this thing doesn't work. What's the most likely response you get from the programmer at that point? Worked on my machine, right? Well, I want to arm you with one simple concept. The next time you hear a programmer say it worked on my machine, grab their machine and ship it to the customer. They will never say that again. They can't. They lost their machine, right? They don't get it back either. So in our world, our programmers can only self-declare they think they're done. Even that is a very explicit definition. And then if QA comes and checks their work shortly thereafter, green dot. Orange means they think they're done. Green says QA came and checked their work and you are done. And that's endorphin rush for the programmers. QA doesn't like what you see. They put a red dot on the card, and that's an endorphin rush for the QA team. Now, I want to give a shout out to the QA people, because let me tell you what QA's heart is. They take it personally when it breaks out in the world. They want to break it while it's still in the room. They don't want it to break out in the world. So honor that on your QA team. And then finally, the lost tribe. How do we address the lost tribe? We injected something completely new into our world. It looks a lot like what IDEO does for their design projects. We call it high-tech anthropology, but the idea is go out into the world and study people in their native environment. I can't stress this enough. This is important because people self-report other stuff than what they actually do. Okay? Now, I'll just work with you on a simple example here that should hit home for most of you. What's the popular cable television system here in Dallas area? Time Warner. Okay, woohoo, Time Warner, yay. Comcast is up in Ann Arbor, and you guys, I don't know, Time Warner and somebody's AT&T is merging or something like that, so yeah, we're really messed up there. But anyways, if you ever had this experience, you get done with the end of a day, you sit down at television, you turn on the TV, and you want to see what's on tonight, right? What button do you push on your remote for that? Guide button. You know what, that's funny? They all call it guide. Why would we call it guide? Isn't that a weird word? Guide? Guide. Why would we call it guide? TV guide? Yeah, how many of you remember newspapers? Anybody remember newspapers? Okay. Yeah, TV guide. Okay, so you sit down, you're ready, you turn on the TV, and then you push the guide button. Oh, right at the end it worked. What did I do? What did I do? Yeah, what did I change it from? Oh, I changed it from TV because I turned on the TV. I changed it to cable, right? What was I in? I was in the wrong what? The mode. I was in the wrong mode. Right? You got to be in the right mode, right? I wanted the TV guide. Why couldn't I be in TV mode? Why did I have to be in cable mode, programmers? Why? Because it's the cable box. You see, I didn't understand the architecture of the system. Are you hanging with me here? Or you're all like, he's being really stupid about a really simple concept here. No! Don't you understand? There's millions of people a year doing this, a day, a minute doing this, calisthenics, sign of the cross, whatever you want to call it, right? I'm praying that my God will come on, right? And you bring that back to the program, our anthropologists would literally watch you watch TV. Now, one of these days, they record this time, somebody from Time Warner or Comcast or somebody's going to call me, well, could you please stop talking about our remotes like that? Fix your remotes. They work. The way the specification is designed is consistent. Who cares, right? I can assure you, you can make it work right. If you push the guide button, I know you just take whatever mode you're in, put it away in a temporary register, silently slip into cable mode for a second, send the signal, and then go back. But if you go talk to the programmers, they're like, that'd be really hard. Like, really? Like, how long are we talking? Well, 2 hours. Oh, okay, so you'd rather have millions of Americans per minute doing this so you don't have to work 2 hours. Awesome. Okay. We need to empathize with the people we serve, okay? We use a lot of paper-based tools for this too. Who knew you could create a chart like this to put a story about the user you intend to serve in the center of a design artifact? Imagine you could get to user-centered design by putting a story of the user in the center of a design artifact. Amazing. Our anthropologists themselves are synthesizers. They are 3M's favorite customer. You can ask me all kinds of questions about that. But here's my big takeaway for you. Because I know why you spend a day. This is hard, isn't it? Taking a day out of work is hard. Because you're going back to emails, you're going back to meetings you've missed, you're behind, right? Because I'm guessing you take a day away to do something like this, you don't get a free chip to say, oh, you don't have to do as much. No, you got to fit it all in. And around the holidays, that's kind of hard. So I want to give you a concrete takeaway. Because the other thing I know is, how many people work here at Capital One in IT? Say, how many people work in IT? No, sorry, what's the number of the totality of people who work in IT here at Capital One, just on this campus? 1,000? And there's not 1,000 people here, okay? So you guys have a mission, and USA has a mission, and all the other people are coming. You have to carry something back. You got to carry some water back from this day, okay? Here's the water. You're gonna get some idea. You're gonna be like, I got it. Plastic Viking helmets to run meetings. And they're all gonna look at you. That won't work here. What about the germaphobes? Right? I mean, something's going to go wrong. And HR won't allow that. That's against policy. Right? You know that's going to happen, right? You bring some idea back, and they're going to shoot it down, and you're busy, so you're stuck, and you go on to the next meeting, and everything dissipates, and nothing comes out of this. I want to arm you with one simple phrase. Run the experiment. Look them in the eye, say, yeah, I know. Let's run the experiment. Let's try something. Let's not defeat it before we even get going. Now, let me tell you about the most famous experiment in our history. Okay? 10 years ago, Tracy had little Maggie. She was off on maternity leave. She was ready to come back to work, but the daycare that they planned to use was filled, and grandparents lived too far away to help. So she came to me and she said, Rich, I don't know what to do. And in that moment, there was a screaming match that occurred in my ears. Dark voice, bright voice. You know how this works. I heard it in here. Tracy never heard it. The conversation in my head went something like this. Don't you dare say what you're about to say. HR will shoot you. The lawyers will freak. The insurance policy go through the roof. The bright voice said, it's your company. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have an HR department. So I looked at Tracy. I said, bring her in. And the look of bewilderment on her face. She said, what do you mean bring her in? I said, bring her into work. She said, all day? I said, sure. She said, every day? And then she looked around the big open room. There's Menlo. She says, Rich, where will I put her? Because I wasn't offering a daycare option. I said, Tracy, she's a baby. She's not going anywhere. Put her on the floor wherever you're working, in a bassinet or a car seat or whatever. I said, she goes, but what if she makes a fuss? I said, here it's like a noisy restaurant. You'll never hear it. She goes, come on, Rich. You know what a big baby fuss sounds like. You raised 3 daughters yourself. What if she does that? And I said, Tracy, you're the mom. I trust you. You'll do the right thing. We'll work it out together. Let's run the experiment. Now, isn't she cute? Funny thing is, that's Ellie, not Maggie. That's Menlo baby number 8. Amos is coming right now into work every day right now. He's Menlo baby number 16 in the last 10 years. This has been an awesome experiment. And I will tell you, when you run experiments, no matter what they are, and I realize bringing babies to work might not work. This isn't about babies. It's about running the experiment. Just happens to be this is a fun story that you'll remember, right? But when you run experiments, expect the unexpected, especially when it involves babies. Maggie learned how to pair program. Maggie went to design meetings. Henry came back to visit. And then we found out a couple of things. Number one, when the babies fussed, it was the team that rescued the child, not the mom or the dad. It was awesome. The team raised the children. They were like, no, it's my turn to hold the baby. And if it wasn't, a diaper or feeding or something, it worked. And then we found out something even better. Our customers behave better when you bring a baby to the meeting. It's awesome. Joy. I told the parents, I said, if there's a chance you could experience a first here at Menlo, like a first roll, Amos just is rolling over now. I don't know if the first rollover he did was at Menlo or not, but if it was, I'd rather have the mom see it firsthand than hear about it from the daycare provider. This is Henry learning to manage. Hey, how's it going? What you working on? Are you almost done? And then this happened. And So we've always had a policy to bring dogs into Menlo. We have a built into our lease, you can have up to 3 dogs in the space. Who does that? But this time, the gentleman in the orange shirt is our customer. He called me ahead of the show and tell that he was coming in. He said, "Rich, do you mind if I bring Buster into the meeting?" I'm like, "Sure, who's Buster?" He says, "My Great Dane." Whoa, that dog's big. He came in, greeted me by putting his paws on my shoulder, and his head was up here, and I'm 6'5". A massive dog. But here's the point of this. If you create a strong enough culture, the people you interact with, the people you serve, want to be more like you, and they start behaving like you. And that becomes a very powerful paradigm for the cultural change you're trying to do. And there's no question, inside of what you're trying to do, rigor and discipline are of paramount importance, because we don't want to have those negative events. None of you guys want to lose $400 million in 45 minutes because you make a simple error. But I will tell you, if the people who are coming into your place are disillusioned, if they're disengaged or anything, the odds that you're going to suffer a negative event are higher. But ultimately, you know as I do that the only sustainable advantage for our organizations is to build that learning organization that Peter Senge talked about in the 5th discipline. I know I'm got like 90 seconds with you before I have to end. I'm happy to take questions now. I'll be around. I'm not going home till tomorrow anyways. We created a special landing page for you, menloinnovations.com/joy AgileCamp, so you can download pictures of the slides or learn more about us. I brought some reading lists for you of books that have greatly influenced our thinking, as well as some of my business cards if you want to keep in touch. Thank you so much for inviting me.